So, if you haven't filed your taxes in years and the IRS hasn't contacted you yet, you may be wondering, am I actually okay now? Maybe they forgot about me. Maybe I don't owe enough for them to even care. And maybe, just maybe, if I stay quiet, nothing's going to happen. Well, here's the truth. Just because the IRS hasn't contacted you doesn't mean you're safe. I'm Bob Jablonski. I'm a certified tax resolution specialist, and I work with taxpayers nationally who have unfiled returns or who owe the IRS. And in this video, I'm going to explain why the IRS may be quiet right now, what risk you're taking by waiting, and why filing before they contact you is usually the smarter move. So, first, let's talk about something that's important. The IRS is not always fast. I regularly speak with people who haven't filed in 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years, and they tell me, well, Bob, I haven't heard anything. And that happens more often than you think. I myself work with the IRS every day, and I'm always amazed. In some ways, they move really quickly. On the other hand, there are things that it's like watching ice melt as it goes through the system. It's just the process. And why does that happen? Well, because the IRS systems are not always immediate. Sometimes returns fall through the cracks temporarily, sometimes notices get delayed, and sometimes your income simply hasn't triggered automated collection activity yet. And here's something many people don't understand. If you do owe the IRS money, they often start by preparing what's called a substitute for return or an SFR. And I talked about that in other videos. And what that means is the IRS may file a tax return for you. What do they have? Well, they have income documents that are reported to them. They may know what your W-2s are. They may know 1099s of income that has come in from you. What don't they have? Well, they don't know the expenses of your business. They don't have deductions for you. They don't understand what credits you may qualify for. So there's no tax planning being done on a substitute for return. Well, what's the result of that? Well, obviously, it can dramatically overstate what you owe the government. And many people don't realize this until many years later. Like people will come to me and we'll pull their transcripts and I'll tell them what they owe for that year. And they say, Bob, it's impossible. Well, it's a substitute for return in many cases. So what are some of the biggest mistakes and risks I see with these non-filers? Well, the biggest mistake I see is that non-filers often assume the IRS hasn't reached out yet. I'm just going to deal with it later. What they don't understand is that waiting can create its own set of problems. First of all, there are penalties and interests that are growing on the amount you owe, even if it's not assessed yet, even if you haven't filed. It's happening behind the scenes. Essentially, when you do file or when that substitute for return is filed on your behalf, it's all going to grow retroactively. All of a sudden, magically, you're going to see all these penalties and interest that could increase the amount you owe and sometimes even doubling the amount you owe. The second thing that happens is when the IRS files a substitute for return, the IRS can eventually start collections on that. They can begin with wage garnishments. They can empty your bank account with a bank levy. Maybe they'll file federal tax lien or take some other aggressive payment action. But the risk that surprises people the most quite often is something that you can't measure in dollars, but it exists just the same. And that's that you lose control of the situation. When you file voluntarily, you usually have more options. You're going to be the one to determine your correct tax liability, not the IRS. You may find that you actually qualify for refunds in some years that you're not going to get if you don't file timely. You can stop the IRS from creating those substitute for returns that we talked about. And if you do owe money, you can often work towards a payment plan, hardship status, or currently not collectible status, or some other resolution strategy that is the best solution for you. However, if you wait until the IRS is already escalating collections, now you're playing defense. Let's say that they've actually garnished or started garnishing your wages. Well, you're going to be operating in crisis and under pressure, and you're probably going to do pretty much whatever they want you to do to make that garnishment go away, as opposed to going through this in a structured, thoughtful manner and coming up with the best solution for you. So one of the situations that I see particularly with small business owners where they don't file, is they think if I file, I'm going to owe money and I can't pay it. And this just creates makes many of these small business owners just freeze in their tracks. Here's what I tell clients all the time: filing and paying are two separate issues. You may not be able to pay everything immediately. That's okay. We'll work through it. The IRS is going to want you to become compliant first. As a matter of fact, they won't even set up a payment plan with you until you're compliant. So get those returns filed. Then we can figure out a solution once you know what you owe. Maybe that's a payment plan. Maybe it's currently not collectible status. Maybe you qualify for penalty relief. Or maybe you're even one of those people that qualifies for a settlement. But avoiding filing because you can't pay usually makes that problem worse, not better. So to wrap this up, if you haven't filed and the IRS hasn't contacted you yet, should you still file? In most cases, I would say the answer is yes. And usually sooner is better than later. Don't assume that silence means safety. The IRS may simply not have caught up yet. And when they do, you're going to want to have been proactive versus reacting to them. Maybe you get a levy notice where there's an urgent deadline, or maybe you even find one day your bank account's empty or your paycheck is getting garnished. You don't want to be reacting to that. And if you are behind in taxes and not sure where to start, the first step is usually understanding what years actually need to be filed and what the IRS already knows about your income. These two things alone can remove a lot of fear and uncertainty. And how do you do that? Well, you pull transcripts usually. And that's the first thing we do for our late filers. And that's the first thing you should do. Figure out what years have been filed and what years haven't been filed. And if they were filed, did you file them? Or did the IRS file a substitute for a return that's inaccurate? And if you're going to file, make sure you get your wage and income transcripts so that you know what income has been reported to the IRS. If that's something you need professional help with in getting back on track, I've left a link in the description as well as in the pinned comment below to get in contact with us. Or you can give me a call at 972-821-1991. If this video helped you, subscribe for more videos about unfiled returns, IRS collection issues, and other practical tax resolution strategies. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below.